Alright guys, hope you're all keeping safe and staying indoors. Today I've got a news video for you discussing an apparent leak of a new specialization coming, among other things, but I also wanted to show you a very simple comparison between the M1A and P416 to discuss a big change I think the game needs. And no, it's not nerfs, in fact I actually think it's the opposite. I think we need buffs to every other weapon in the game. With that said, if you enjoy this one, you can support me by dropping a like down below and subscribing for dedicated Division 2 content. Let's begin. Alright, so to start off with, I want to take a look at this Reddit post recently posted titled Datamine, latest patch hidden specialization, brand set, Foundry items. The user FitStart0 posted this to Reddit, apparently outlining a new specialization logo being added to the existing ones in the files, 4 new brand sets, 4 new weapon talents, and some obscure file text related to the Foundry Raid. The second raid coming shortly, I hope. So first things first, let's please just take this with a pinch of salt because this could entirely be false, but just bear that in mind as we go through this. Now there was a raid datamine leak way before the first raid actually came out, Dark Hours, which is very detailed and it seemed legit because of that, but it actually turned out to be false. At least for the first raid, from memory it mentioned something about fighting hunters on a bridge or escaping over a bridge. We don't know where the Foundry actually takes place, so this leak from some time ago might be relevant to the Foundry raid, we just don't know that yet. So this post, guys, this post says the new specialization is called Alchemist and it's tailored towards skill damage, and they included this image which you're going to see on the screen now. Again, this could easily be falsified, but I have to admit the image actually looks really awesome. It looks like something I'd love to have as a logo image. Actually, it's pretty cool. Now maybe the specialization could be something that revolved around builds which used the Riot Foam or the Oxidizer Chem Launcher if it's kind of skill damage based specialization, but the devs did already confirm there will be no new specializations for this year, so I find it less than unlikely for this to be true, although it's quite likely that specializations will be coming in year 3. Again, we don't know that yet. The next thing they move on to, and this is where I think the data mine information really kind of falls apart, and this is the 4 new brand sets which they named Phoenix, Lone Wolf, Horoscope and Redacted. The brand set icons attached to these are as follows. What you're going to immediately notice is that 2 of the highlighted new brand sets were added to the game of Warlords, and they're in the game as of right now, and they are Golan Gear and Grupo Sombra SA. So neither match the names given in the datamine post. It could be that the devs changed the name of the brand sets, but like the other datamine on the first raid, this is not accurate. So this kind of, for me, makes it fall apart a little bit. The last thing this datamine post said was the text file I found was titled Foundry. It has a bunch of special characters and IDs, which I guess might be bosses or sort of target NPCs, and they're called Blazing Bullet, Bohemium, and the Drastic. Now, these could absolutely be the names of some coming in the Foundry. This could be accurate. These names kind of sound like something that could be in the Division, definitely. But again, we just don't know for sure. Now, the Foundry Raid is getting closer, with no official release date as of yet, but I imagine it's going to be coming sometime around May, June time. So I suspect we are going to see more of this sort of thing leading up to that time. But this is the most recent information we've got about possible Foundry stuff and possible new gear sets coming with the Foundry. We do know there are some new gear sets coming with the Foundry. I've already covered these a while ago. They've started to be covered by other YouTubers recently. I believe Lethal and Willis Gamer have recently covered them, but I actually covered them maybe 2 weeks ago, possibly 2 or 3 weeks ago. So you can go check that out because we do know of some that are coming, but the ones that I mentioned here, I'm not so sure. Next up, and this isn't news, but I think it's really important. It's something I briefly summarised in my last video where I talked about stuff the game is suffering with and stuff that needs to be changed, and I think you guys really enjoyed that video as well, and I will do more of those. The M1A experience versus other weapons in the game. Now guys, if you're not using the M1A with a full red DPS build, the experience you get with NPC time to kill is vastly different. And I think every weapon in the game needs to be at the same high bar as the M1A. Do you know why a lot of people enjoyed using the damage glitch? Well, it's because for once you could actually see the power fantasy come into play as you absolutely tore through the NPCs. Now, this is something you just don't feel in the current game. The closest you can actually get to that feeling of power where you feel like, you know, you're not shooting marshmallows, but actually you are doing damage to NPCs, you know, is when you're actually using the M1A with a full DPS build. Now, I'm not going to go full Marco style here with damage numbers and tiers or whatever, and actually I'm going to do quite the opposite actually. I just simply don't have the skill for that, but a simple test in the shooting range is very clear. So with a named NPC aiming for the head, it took my DPS build with the M1A about 3 seconds to take down the target. I was using the sharpshooter specialization. As I said, it's almost full reds. It's not fully, but it is. I'm going to use the same DPS build for my AR as well. I tried the same with the P416, and it took about double the time. When I used the FAMAS, it felt even longer, I believe. So I believe the P416 was around 6 seconds. I believe the FAMAS was about 7 seconds, maybe a little bit longer. Because obviously with these weapons, especially on named NPCs, they're not, you're having to reload, whereas with the M1A, you don't need to. You can take down a named NPC with, you know, not many bullets really whatsoever, but with these other ones you have to reload, and that's a couple of seconds there that you lose. So the overall damage per second is just vastly more when you're using anything other than the M1A. LMGs are a little bit more forgiving because they got larger mag sizes, but still they're nowhere near the M1A. Now if you are to aim for the body, then it's even worse. Using an M1A for the body, you're looking at 6 to 7 seconds. With an assault rifle like the P416, you're looking at anywhere between 13 to 16 seconds or something along the lines of that. It's vastly worse. Now, if you have optimized your DPS build with an M1A up to legendary difficulty, you can actually one-shot any kind of red bar NPC. Now, this is just not possible with any other weapon aside from a sniper rifle. And that's really important to note because on higher difficulties, NPCs have a much faster response time to take cover. If you're not one-shotting red bar NPCs, they're going to get into cover. And we all know they are as deadly as any other NPC in the game, which is why it also feels a lot worse to use something like an assault rifle or something that's fast firing but doesn't one-shot red bars. The M1A is just better in pretty much every way. And it also isn't just the M1A, okay? So its power is compounded by the sharpshooter specialization, which gives it an additional 50% headshot damage. No other specialization compounds the damage of other weapon types in the game. So you're getting a flat 15% extra headshot damage when you're using a sniper, or in this case an M1A, from that specialization, and that's huge. You know, that's 15% extra headshot damage, which you're not getting anywhere else. On top of that, you have the Fox's Prey knee pads. That is one of the best DPS talents in the game, with damage to targets out of cover, which is multiplicative. And yeah, you could use that with an assault rifle, definitely, or an SMG, but then you're not getting the benefit from the brand talent giving you extra 10% rifle damage. So you've got 15% headshot damage, you've got 10% rifle damage. You know, in conclusion, the M1A is far superior to any assault rifle SMG in the game for PvE. It's superior to any LMG in the game as well, although the difference isn't quite as apparent. And this is partly due to the M1A just being stronger, but also because there are talents, you know, attributes, and the sharpshooter specialization that complements and compounds that damage. Something not offered to the other weapon archetypes, except for LMGs with the damage to armor attribute on the contractor gloves. So what do we do then? With this in mind, what do we do? Well, in my opinion, I think all weapons need to be scaled up to the power of the M1A. And the devs need to provide more options with specializations, talents, and attributes that compound the damage on those weapon types as well, just like the M1A. There's no talents that compound the damage of an SMG or an AR or any of the other stuff in the game. It's only really the M1A. Now, usually developers nerf the outlier, but I just don't think that should happen here, because you feel the most powerful when you are using the M1A, and that power needs to be projected over all weapons. Nerfing the M1A would reduce that power fantasy, and it would frankly upset the vast majority of people, myself included. Trust me guys, if you've not used an M1A DPS build, you just have to. It will make you feel powerful. Of course, you are going to be squishy, but that doesn't make much difference really, as it doesn't appear the recent changes have made that much difference to the time to be killed in the game, and I'm going to cover that in another video, I think. So Massive, if you're watching, you know, please buff all the weapons up to the M1A ceiling. We did this with a P416 before, where they buffed the weapons up to the P416. The P416 was still the best weapon, but it felt a lot better. And I think they need to do the same thing here, where they consider not only just buffing the weapon damage up to the M1A kind of ceiling, but they consider adding or changing talents, attributes and specializations in the game to complement that damage. Because if you imagine you buff everything up to the M1A, while the M1A is still going to get 15% headshot damage on from the specialization, you're still going to get the Fox's prayer knee pads, which gives you the extra 10% damage. You know, because plus you're getting the damage to targets out of cover. So they need to do more than that, otherwise the M1A is still going to be the best in the game. But there needs to be buffs here. No nerfs, please, no nerfs. There needs to be buffs, because only when you're using the M1A and you've got a full DPS build do you actually feel like you're doing considerable damage, and that's all the way up to Legendary. If you notice, most people that run Legendary or even Heroic are using a shield and they're using an M1A. And there's a reason for that, because it is so superior and everything needs to be buffed up to that, not nerfed. Lastly, if you're interested in purchasing an official Division 2 940 cap, you can do this by going to neweracap.co.uk and searching the Division 2. As you can see, there are 3 caps to purchase with varying prices. I've got no incentive for this, it's just that if you want this sort of thing, it is available, and I know a lot of people have been asking about this, so yeah, you can go and do that. But that's it for today's video. Tomorrow we got the new apparel event and the second manhunt. If I'm not working from home tomorrow, I will likely live stream this, so stay tuned on here, guys. With that said, thanks for all your support, and until the next one, Epic out.